that there's a paragraph at the end of most of these sections that says, well, everything we've said so far we think has validity, but we're not quite sure. And, you know, I guess I don't know what we do with that, except, you know, I think there's a lot that's in play here. That my guts tell me that behavioral finance is really important, but that they're still missing something. They're still missing a point. And I go back to dealing with individuals, that human beings come one at a time, and that they come with their own stuff, their own predilections, their own history, and we need to treat them all as individuals. And there's something about this behavioral finance that desperately wants to start labeling folks in groups of more than one. And I don't think they've found a way to do that yet. What do you think?
I would agree that, I mean, that is,
You don't have to agree, by the way.
because what they're trying to do, I guess, it seems, is they're trying to come up with a way of categorizing people into different groups, or at least certain. I would say in reality it's only certain parts of people, because with all the different things that, you know, various people have gone through, experienced, and just the different, you know, array of personality types, etc., you're going to have, you know, different sections or segments or biases, you know, whatever you want to call the various concepts here that we're talking about. Different things are going to come into play at different times, and they're going to interact with one another. So you're going to have, you know, you may be using a heuristic that is then going to be interacting somehow with, I don't know, say house money effect, just because it's one of the ones I really recall out of our reading last time around. And it's going to affect different people in different ways. And so, yeah, in that sense, people are individual. You can't just say that, you know, everyone having, you know, one X amount of dollars is going to now risk X. So it doesn't work.
Right.
It doesn't really work that way, because there are so many other influence in play. And you can't look at a group and say overall this is what's going to happen. Maybe you could take an average, something of that nature, but I kind of doubt that would be very successful from a planning point of view. Because
what's the utility of that?
Exactly, right. Because then what happens, you know what the average is, okay, but in reality, if you take an average, there are only a few people who are actually close to that average. You know, the others are going to be some distance away from it, and then you have your outliers, which are probably not even a great one to them in reality.
I was going to say, it's probably driving yourself crazy in the process. It's
yeah, and well, in a lot of ways it has a lot to do with
clients. Say again? I lost you there at the end.
I was just saying
Alan?
It's almost like, yeah, can you hear me?
Well, you're in and out. Whatever you're doing.
Okay.
Don't shout. Just stay the same distance from the microphone.
Okay. I was saying it's almost like with the herd behavior that, you know, we're talking about traders, mutual fund advisors, etc., institutional traders, and how they're sort of herding as far as what they're recommending or trading as far as stocks go. And part of that is, one of the studies I read, a possible part of that is perhaps that, you know, certain people don't want to be found out not to be as competent, and then there are those who stand out, and so they're really, really, you know, putting themselves out on a limb and perhaps trying to prove something. Well, it seems to me that's in some way also true of financial planning. If we're all trying to use these concepts and lump people together, it's almost like a herd behavior or herd mentality on our part, to me, in some sense.
Well, I think that's real. I think it's that the herd behavior on the part of actual professional investors is perhaps more pronounced than it is with individuals. That I think it exists. I think people do follow the hot stuff, but mutual fund managers do amazing amounts of contortive behavior at the end of a quarter, so that their portfolios don't look a lot different than their competition. They don't want to be caught without. There are articles about how they don't want to be the ones caught without Apple stock. But they want to be able to tell their investors that they've got Apple stock, even if they only had it for 2 days before they reported it. So yeah, there's I think some of that we need to understand about our sources of investment. Kind of what I like about services like Motley Fool. They don't follow the herd in that respect. Whereas mutual fund managers, there's an awful lot of grouping that goes on. In fact, there's a couple of mutual funds here in Denver. There's a couple of mutual funds that actually analyze what managers are doing and invest based on who is it that has outstanding non-herd-like behavior, and they'll invest for the guys that aren't in the herd. Athena Investments. I used to be a professor at the University of Denver, and he developed these various algorithms to analyze what individual managers were doing. I think that's pretty interesting, personally.
Are you familiar with the Janus Fund? They also in Denver.
Oh yeah.
I was there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think they're not herd-like. Themselves a little trouble a couple years ago, but I don't think they behave like the herd.
Mm-hmm.
So, Twee, what would interest you in terms of the paper?
I would like to do something like what you suggest last week. Like, I want to know more about the people, the anti Wall Street, the Occupy. I don't know why they do that. I don't know why they going out there and protesting. I know that is probably a level of angry. However, I just don't see the direction where they're going. So I just want to know more about that, and I think that probably it's interesting to do a research on what they're thinking right now.
Well, that would be of interest to me. Have you heard of David Graeber?
Yes.
What do you know about him?
I just heard of his name.
He just got called Debt, which is, among other things, a survey of money's origins. He came up with some pretty interesting theories, and part of his theories ultimately come to money as we know it is going to be changing so dramatically it will turn society pretty much inside out, and he's one of the leaders of the Occupy movement. He's a anthropologist and an anarchist, and sees governments coming down and sees different forms of exchange. I would recommend. I'm in the middle of reading Debt myself, and it's fascinating. You might take a look at that book. It's not a
What is
light
the
read.
name of the book? Because your voice goes in and out.
I'm sorry. The name of the book is Debt. Is that any better?
Yes, thank you.
6 weeks in, we haven't figured out the technology.
Yeah, it seems like it's gotten better.
Is that better? Alan? I'm putting it on my chest, my computer, bringing
Yeah, I can hear it
the
clearly
microphone a
now.
little closer. It hides my beautiful face a little bit, but oh well.
Is Graeber the? I read an article a while back about an anarchist who apparently has gotten very involved in the Occupy Wall Street. That's not Graeber. That is him.
That's the guy. It is the guy. Absolutely. Was a professor at Yale. Recently, he's been employed by
Yeah, that sounds right.
a college in England. But his articles are pretty interesting. They certainly are challenging. And I think there's a lot of behavioral economics that's implicit within them. We don't want to shoot the messenger. I think he's got some observations that are worth paying attention to, I think, although he would probably call himself a leftist, or somebody else would call himself a leftist, I don't think he's traditional left, right, or anything. I think he's speaking to a different direction. One of you guys has got a really loud keyboard. It's kind of interesting. I keep thinking I'm going to see a message, and I don't ever see one. So what do you think? What makes sense for a paper? I like the direction you're going. How would you apply it to your practice?
How is that going to apply to my practice?
Yeah.
That what? I don't know, because most of people I work with, that they kind of anti of these people. They really don't understand why these people protesting, and so obviously they have more money, so they don't understand that. So I don't think it really applies directly to my practice, but I just want to know more about why people behave like this.
Well, we still need to bring it back to some of these behavioral economic concepts. So part of it is, what are we hearing from the Occupy people that has legitimacy, and what are we hearing that may be apocalyptic or prophetic? And I guess I would just as soon sift out what I would call the hangers-on. What parts are legitimate? Like a David Graeber has some pretty well-documented observations about society. And if his observations are correct, what would it mean to the kind of advice that you're capable of giving your clients? What if the system's starting to fall apart? Would you change your advice? Think about being in Argentina in the year 2000. Think about being in a country where the currency is falling apart. What would that mean?
Buy a cow, buy some chickens, buy some farmland, and be as self-sufficient as possible.
Yeah, people used to ask me what happens if the credit of the United States government falls apart, and I said, I think you got to invest in bullet futures somewhere in there. And is that really realistic? You know, for maybe a few people who have had survival training, but I'd probably rather work on trying to keep portions of the system. Has to take this kind of stuff into account. If you're dealing with a 25 or 30-year-old, and you're asking them to save money, you're asking them to save money for a time that's, let's say, 35 or 40 years away. What are the possibilities between here and there?
Yeah, sorry, that was me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I read it. I get the hard copy as well, which strangely, even though I'm in technology, I like to read hard copies. But
Did you read it?
whatever. Yeah,
You know, I think it
more
reads
relaxing,
differently, actually. I think it's different to read it in hard copy versus the computer. You get different takeaways.
to some degree.
It's like recorded music versus being at the concert. Yeah. Guy's interesting. Doesn't know how to drive. Great.
To be honest, I very much disagreed with a lot of a lot of what he's going on about.
Well, what's there for us?
Not.
You read it. You have some thoughts?
I've been looking at it more politically, so not from the stance that there aren't possibly some valid points, but it's more along the lines of, okay, so he's decided he's an anarchist, which to me, I did a study way back in high school of anarchism, Mikhail Bakunin, and kind of the entire anarchist movement. Of course, that was back then, but I don't see many. I don't really see many solutions in their overall philosophy, and so that kind of makes it hard for me to take much of what they're saying seriously. Which is probably my own my own behavioral. It's an issue of my own, I would say.
Okay.
But nevertheless, they're there. They're angry, and I mean, I haven't read Debt, but basically, I'm saying that he's unhappy, and he is an instructor, obviously, or professor, so he's got to have something behind his philosophy.
Oh, he's smart. I mean, it's an interesting. He's not stupid, and I think his. Do you have the article up, Helen? Okay, go to the second page.
With Debt,
Very top of that page.
Controlling.
I mean, are you aware? Are you aware that for every dollar in circulation, there's a dollar of debt? The debt is the basis of our financial system.
I was going to say no.
In fact, do you know where the word finance comes from?
For each dollar, there's a dollar of debt, and no, I don't know where it comes from.
And somebody recently told me, no, but I'm about to find out, I suspect. Well, I think I was stunned when I learned that. I was stunned, and yet, if you think about the fractional reserve system, that's how money is created, is through the lending system, through the debt system, and that was what was so, in many respects, so horrific about the fact that the housing market fell apart, because the housing and real estate was serving as the value side of all these loans, and it was literally the basis for our financial system. Now, what are the first three letters of the word finance? And that comes from the fact that debt comes at an end, that you have paid off your debt. That's the finance system, is the paying off of debt. And that's the origins of the word finance. Finish. And I think that's kind of pretty interesting. And I will guarantee you that not 1 in 1,000 financial planners knows this. I have yet to run into anyone who does. But the words of finance are important. The word capital is related to chattel, which is related to cattle. The origins of the word capital are in cattle, which is the banking system for various tribes in Africa.
I'm understanding the word. I'm not sure I'm understanding the ramifications.
That all make sense?
Yes.
One time well, just, I think it's interesting that cattle serve as a banking system. That wealth is measured in terms of cattle. I once had a fascinating conversation with a member of the Maasai tribe in Africa. And my family and my wife's family both have histories in ranching and dairy farming. And so I ended up in a conversation with this fellow about cows. And he was telling me how his wealth is measured in how many cows he owns. And that's where their money, if they earn money, their money goes to cows or they're trading. And at the end of our conversation, he had this sort of flabbergasted look on his face. He just said, I said, sort of what? He said, well, I never thought I'd be talking about cows with someone from the United States. And talking about how we deal with cattle. It's pretty interesting. That's all behavioral, of course. So what did you find most interesting about this week's assignment?
I was a little confused by the discussion topic, actually. I'd have to go back and read it, but it was just kind of a string of thoughts about how
How so?
It was at how investor mood and behavior can affect investment decisions, if I recall. I'm paraphrasing, of course. It just seemed very open-ended because, of course, that's really, in a lot of ways, what this entire course is about. So it just seems very broad.
Okay, you're loud. Well, but isn't there a lot of open-endedness to the topic? That's why I thought the article that I sent this afternoon was so interesting, so important. It was part of its message was that things are in a great state of flux with this topic. That there really aren't experts. There are people that are throwing out suppositions, but I don't see anybody throwing out hard and fast anything. And if anything, they're trying. My problem with psychology in general, and particularly this sort of behavioral stuff, right, is that it pretends to know what's going on in the interior of an individual, or even the interior of a group of individuals, and it really doesn't have a way of validating that in the science. It wants to be a science, but it doesn't quite get there. So I think there's value to understanding the concepts, and there's value to listening to descriptors, but I don't like it when they pretend to know more than they know. And when I think about working directly with clients, I think many of these terms are more important for us than they are for the client. That we need to avoid the herd behavior, that we need to think about when we make recommendations, we need to think about our own, what's the one, recency bias, for example, or mutual funds have not been a great place to put your money in the 21st century. What are the alternatives to mutual funds? If you're stuck there, how do you get unstuck? These are questions. You guys get to answer some of them. We only got two of you. You got to help me out here.
Well, sometimes that I sit in front of the client portfolio, and it takes many hours for me just to really decide what makes sense. And when you find out, yes, it makes sense to put this fund here, and then I go back and then analyze again and again and again, and it takes a lot of time, and that time with the emotion. And because I don't see the value there, is reflect of what I believe, and sometimes I kind of change it. And then I look at the standard deviation, I look at beta, alpha, I look at what they invest in. So it's go back to behavior. What is this a good way to do? How can I remove my emotion when I try to invest my client money? And sometimes that you put so much thought into portfolio, it's even go back to it's very hard. Like you said that you have sometimes you let money manager handle it. I do some of that to a certain degree, but it's for the more like from 1 to 3 years that I have to send client the retirement income. I handle it by myself, and so it's really hard job to do it.
Well, it's hard to do it seriously and to keep your promises to your clients. It's not an easy way to earn a living. So if you put that much work into it, is your client almost always comfortable with what you've done?
Yeah, they really trust me, and the more, it's like they told me, we trust you. And when they say that, when I look at the market is keep going down and down and down, and I could not sleep. I just feel like, you should not trust me this much. It is really hard.
That's really profound, actually. And there's some truth to that. They shouldn't trust you that much. You don't have that kind of power. That's a blind faith. I think that's more than trust. I think that's some kind of faith that and hope on their part that the decision they've made will work out, and that decision is to trust you. There's no higher compliment, by the way. They know you're working your best for them, right?
Yes.
I mean, what a nice thing for somebody to say, that they trust you.
Yeah, but it also, when they say that, and it really hard. I don't know. I think that is I.
Well, you're doing a good job. You're just not. You can't venture into the future, and you can't change reality. It's not your job to make the money. It's your job to keep your promises. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I mean, you really can't be too hard on. Well, I'm guessing you can be pretty hard on yourself. So I can't say you can't be too hard on yourself, because I'm guessing that's a pretty high standard. But I think you need to cut yourself some slack. If there's only so much you can do, at the end of the day, the markets will be the markets. And maybe that's what I find difficult about this material, is that it seems to continually say that, taking all this into account, we really don't know, and I think that's right. We really don't know, and that part of it. Oh gosh, what's his name? There's a guy that writes a lot for Financial Advisor magazine, and has written several books, and basically, he has given he has communicated one sentence worth of advice: get your clients into stocks and keep them there. Sorry?
Is that his name, Murray or Marie or something? I forgot his name, but he talked to us. My firm had him over and talk to us. The guy that write a lot of article on the Financial Advisor magazine.
Okay.
About behavior, about emotion. Nick, his name Nick.
Nick Murray. Nick Murray. Yeah, that's the guy.
Right?
Yeah, that's him. And he has a very consistent message, and a lot of people really like him. But his message is get your clients into stocks and keep them there. And I'm not sure what the last decade has done to him, but he was right for a very long time. And time does. I used to have a phrase: time heals all wounds, and wounds all heals. That's a joke. You guys are allowed to laugh. But
now I'm laughing.
Thank you. Sometimes I'm a funny guy in my own mind. Well, at any rate, there's dealing with people and their emotions And particularly when the markets go down. And, you know, what we've been going through lately is just so...
I'm just saying I can imagine. I mean, you know...
yesterday seemed almost normal. It was like, what, a 2.5% drop?
If you've got large sums in for clients...
And if you're managing a lot of money, 2.5% turns into big numbers.
A lot of money potentially one day gone.
You're managing... Sorry? Say again? Well, you get your report from Schwab, and it'll tell you what you made or lost today. And of course, it's funny money in an awful lot of ways. But if you're managing $150 million and it's telling you that you lost 2% of that, you know, that's $4.5 million, $5 million bucks. It's depressing, and people like Twee are you know, having trouble sleeping. Fair enough. I've got to fix my computer here. Excuse me. So, Twee, I'm going to suggest to you, if you're going to do some research on the Occupy movement, you think about what lessons from there, what issues you might bring back to your clients, and how to view some of those issues with through the lenses of what we've been learning.
Don't you think that they pretty kind of go towards socialism?
No. No, I think there's a lot of anger over the fact that they think there's two sets of rules. And I think part of looking at that is if in fact the game has been played with or jimmied to serve one group of people, which, you know, I think there's probably some legitimacy behind the bank. There's rules for bankers, there's rules for everybody else. Now, the fact that not one banker has been thrown in jail does upset me, I'll tell you that. That the whole, what was going on around, well, what do you call them, the derivatives, that nobody has gone to, say again?
The MF fund with Cosine.
Yeah, that's you know, that's a big deal. That guy lost a lot of money.
Yeah, I read it.
He was a governor of the state of New Jersey.
About Corzine and the MF, was it MF Global, I think?
And he brought the firm to that level. Well, how did he even get that much money?
Entire history.
I mean, there's a story there. Dave, was his name Corzine?
Chairman?
There's a story there that we haven't heard that story yet.
Goldman Sachs.
I don't know what has gone on, but we haven't heard the story.
This article actually said, and this is the only person that when they came to, you know, lead Goldman Sachs, looking back at their prior performance at Goldman, it really was a head scratcher. Because apparently he lost an awful lot of money and then somehow became the boss.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's a story to be it's going to be unfolding here.
What did Michael Lewis write?
And I'm guessing that the person, if you could think of somebody who really goes to town on this story, hopefully somebody will. Who's the guy that wrote Michael Lewis? I'd like to see Michael Lewis take this one on. I'm sorry? Liar's Poker, Moneyball. He wrote the definitive treatise on what happened with the housing crisis. What was the name of that book? Pretty famous now. A lot of people have read it. So I'm all for shutting down early if we're gonna not have a vibrant conversation. What do you all think? I think we've kind of exhausted. I'm sorry? Happy Thanksgiving?
Before Thanksgiving?
Well, I think we've had a good hour, actually, but I don't know what else to say. I can go through. I got some notes here that I thought was interesting.
Because if you don't, I mean, if you've got someone who doesn't,
I guess one question I would have is what is the role of risk tolerance?
They're going to be
in putting together a portfolio
under stress to no end. I
think that's an interesting question.
Well, I mean, the way they feel when they see what's happening, when they get a statement, for instance, when they
How will they know? Colin, how will they know they're under stress? Well, that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I mean,
no matter if you guess the risk tolerance correctly or not.
Happy though, if they see or realize that they're in risky assets,
they're going to be unhappy if their portfolio goes backwards.
Yeah, they may never. Yeah, they may never do. They may never do that, depending on the client and their own kind of curiosity and knowledge.
Hello? And who says an asset is risky? Well, Twee, help me out here, because you're in the trenches. It always seemed to me that risk tolerance was an overrated concept. I mean, you don't want to put somebody in where they're going to be just scared to death, or they're really misplaced. But if somebody agrees that a 60-40 portfolio is correct, and they still lose money, and that's how you talk about it, they're still going to be unhappy. But on the other hand, if they don't make money with where you put them, you can't eat risk tolerance. At the end of the day, they still have to be able to function with their financial assets. And they may remember, we may be watching people live 30, 40 years on unearned income. We may be watching, with the changes in lifespan, we may be watching 65-year-olds live to 105 on a pretty consistent basis. What's the job of
the... Is very hard to define this day, because as you know that we went through last 3 years. Even you put someone with a strategic income in the past, it's a standard deviation is like 6, right? And because last 3 years, that standard deviation can get bigger, like 10 or 12. So I don't know how to define the risk at this point, because even if you put people into a very conservative portfolio with a dividend, you think it's a conservative, but then what is happened during the 2008, 2009, and now 2011, I really don't know what is the only thing that it really makes sense right now, short term, corporate bond fund, even mini bond fund is fluctuate more than that some people can handle it. So only the short-term corporate, which is the dividend, is the 3%. That's the only thing that I think that is It's no risk. However, if you put everything in there, how can you beat up with the inflation? So I really don't know. That's a really tough question.
Well, I always abided by the notion that you can't eat risk tolerance. That at the end of the day, you still have to deal with performance requirements.
Yeah, you just have to, when the market's down, what I do that I call client, I invite them into the office and just try to hold their hand to go through that period. I don't know what else I can do.
I think that's lovely. I think it's perfect. But as I think about, I believe that's the right answer. And as I think about it in terms of some of these other issues, it's holding their hand is not intellectually challenging, but it's the right thing to do, right?
Right.
So you know, I think it's kind of interesting that the authors of this book didn't talk in terms of holding their hands as one of the things you do in client management. They went back to the mathematics.
Even I have a lot of attorneys, they're really tough, but when they came to my office and they develop a good relationship with you and you talk to them, you know, is amazing. It's beyond the number.
I'm guessing you're a really good financial advisor.
I know.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, you've impressed me as someone with a lot of brain and a lot of heart.
Oh, thank you. I feel lucky that I get to know you and talk to you, and so I can learn something because you're in the business for a long time. And then you also write a lot of articles. And so you obviously is someone in the industry that we can look up to. So I told my home office, I told my boss that I'm so lucky that I get to talk to you. Colin,
well,
I know that I don't know how you feel about him saying this, but I really speak from the sincerity that I'm saying this.
Well, I appreciate it. I do. I like to think I have something to share. This course has been interesting because I find the textbook and I don't agree quite a bit of the time.
I just kind of grin and bear it.
So it's you know, I think that there are terms here that are worth understanding.
I look for kind
of that hand-holding piece, including for yourself, if it's your portfolio.
Today, I have some.
You know, I don't know how you've been looking at the last while here, Colin, but you know, I know you have investments, and I'm guessing that they're fluctuating. How do you treat yourself?
That's right. Yeah, it's been difficult lately though, because there have seemed to be many days where nearly everything is down, and that strikes me as being somewhat unusual, or you know, it's against kind of what we've all.
Well, that's why they call it asset allocation, you know. I mean, that's the idea, is that something's picking up the bad stuff.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, at the risk of treading on my own notions, there isn't that recency bias. And that's why it's useful to know some of these terms, is that you can apply it to when you catch yourself in doing those things. It's useful to know that it's got a term. But yeah, I think that it's easy to look at the recent past and believe it's going to replicate. And I think that's part of the lesson of the Occupy movement is I think we're in a state of,
I don't remember that.
Something's changing. Something's going on. You know, in the '60s we had the "something's happening, but you don't know what it is" phrase in Bob Dylan's song. If you can finish that, you get extra credit.
It is. It's something is going on.
Either one of you?
Economies.
About what?
It's even bigger than that, really.
Something's happening here, but you don't know what it is.
I don't know.
Yeah. Because. Mm-hmm.
Do you, Mr. Jones? And money's right there in the middle of it. If you think about how we've changed our relationship to money over the past 60 years, it's pretty awesome. We've gone from an heavy agriculture society to almost non-existent agriculture society. 2%, 37% after World War II, 2% now.
Change is happening. Their
over the last 100 years,
becoming more of one with money.
What we thought was the way life was lived 100 years ago is not the way life is lived now.
I think even the Arab Spring.
Go back 40 years, same thing.
Has a bit to do with it in reality.
It's not so different, but it's pretty different.
Cities,
no computers.
The way they interacted with what was around them, and yes, money and attitudes toward it had at least some impact on that.
So you have the haves, you have the have-nots, you have the people in power, you have the people not in power. You have agriculture being less and less a part of how, although China still has a pretty substantial agrarian economy, and there's a real difference between city dwellers and country dwellers. There's huge issues there, but yeah, it's things are moving, and we just passed our 7 billionth planetary citizen. 100 years ago, I think there were 1.5 billion on the planet. So we've had a huge increase in population in the last 100 years. And money is part of what has enabled that. And investment's part of what has enabled that. The efficient exchange of how do you put capital to work. I mean, we're dealing with big stuff. In my own modern money tenets, I believe that money is the most powerful and pervasive secular force on the planet. Money is a 21st century survival skill. It's a survival skill that doesn't come easily to human beings and remains the subject of a huge taboo, that we can't talk about it with each other, and we can't hold personal conversations about money very easily, and we can't hold communal conversations. And that's what makes it such an exciting subject, that if you're looking at how people relate to the force of money, it's not just about investment, it's how they run their lives, it's how they earn their living, it's what they do for work, how they spend their days, how they honor their obligations to other people, their families. Um, yes, we have a lot to be thankful for, but by the same token, is money reliable enough and strong enough to carry that kind of a load? And that's where I guess I'm seeing behavioral finance is ducking these issues. It hasn't really taken it seriously and is looking for, I think, particularly some of the concepts that are in these chapters, looking to turn things into concrete that just aren't inherently concrete. They're conceptual, and it's not an awful thing to name them, but it is an awful thing to think they're that as pervasive as I think it's communicated here. What do you think?
Yeah, money is very powerful. As you see that they have a statistic out there say that 60% to 70% of the divorces is related to money. It's a disagreement between husband and wife. That wife. It's very powerful.
I think you're right, and it's not a pretty thing to watch people disagree over money in front of you. You were. Well, if you could artfully deal with it, then you're a hero.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that there's special skills for people that can help husbands and wives deal effectively with money and their money issues. I once heard a minister observe that a trouble with newlyweds is that they each come to the wedding with certain scripts, and they think they know what they are, but they don't. And that it's one of the challenges of any marriage. Are you married, Tui?
Yes, I'm married.
And I know you are, Colin. You ever have conversations with your spouse about money?
Well, you know, I have I hired financial advisor to work with him, so I don't have to work with him.
Oh, good work! I knew you were good.
I don't want to get into argument for that.
Do you know Rick Taylor?
No.
Do you know of Rick Taylor? He's the guy you might. Pardon me?
I don't know him.
Well, he won the FPA's Call for Papers Prize a couple of years ago with a paper that every planner should have a planner.
You had mentioned, I don't think it was
he's a very good speaker. He's a
class session. I think it was the one before.
He's a good friend of mine.
Talking about the nature of money.
Yeah, he has a great newsletter.
I got to thinking about that, and
log on to his newsletter. It's quite a
sort of in a way as
a gem. I get it.
How
2 or 3 times a week.
Very little about money, but I think money, the way it's used, the way it's passed, how hard people work for it, what they are paid, it shows a lot of kind of the attitudes and the place kind of that people hold in society, but it's almost to the level, I mean, that part of it seems obvious, but it's more like a way of communicating what different, I don't know if I should say groups or society as a whole, feels is worthwhile or feels is valuable. So it's a means of communication, but with, I don't know. It's almost like a communicating at some different level. It's kind of hard to explain. Yeah.
Sure. Well, the metaphor that I've used is money is the lifeblood of the body social. Literally, it's what enables body social to thrive and survive. And I think that in terms of communication, money will help you understand what you value. You know, as long ago as when the Bible was created, where your money is, let's see. Where your money is, you'll also find your heart.
Yeah.
The money, it's a reverse metaphor. If you want to say where your treasure is, so shall your
No, I'm agreeing. I remember
heart.
a story. I remember
Where your
a
heart is, so
story
shall your
about,
treasure be. But it's
oh,
the
man.
opposite.
It was about, I think it was I think they refer to him simply as a master, but basically
Take a look. If either of you played around with the Bible Gateway,
he was two different servants,
No.
and one invested
it's a pretty interesting
and turned it into additional, and the other
to do word searches in the Bible Gateway for words like money and words like gold. It's very interesting. Remember, this stuff is 2,000 to 3,000 years old.
Right.
And when the Bible was written.
Yeah. Right.
Right. He wasn't very happy. The master wasn't very happy. I think he tossed him out on his ear. Called him names. Well, my belief is that the best work on our personal relationships with money is about 2,000 years old. That the Synoptic Gospels have lessons that are still very valid about money. And I guess that's, at the end of the day, it's probably where I think more about behavioral finance, that there's our relationship with money is that kind of important. It is a soul issue. It's where your values are. Where your treasure is, your heart shall also be. That's how it goes. And think about that. It's pretty awesome that there's that kind of relationship. Money is the second most talked about topic in the Bible. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Now you're supposed to say, what's number one, Dick? It's the kingdom of Thank you. It's the kingdom of God.
Mm-hmm.
But you put money right behind the kingdom of God in terms of frequency and in terms of focus and concentration. Some of the early property laws that were described in Leviticus, pretty interesting. How the economic life of the community went was very much a focus of some of those early books. So this isn't new stuff. This has ancient origins as well as really modern applications. And back to Occupy, I continue to wonder how much difference there really is between the Occupy people and the Tea Party. And people try to separate them. I'm not sure, but what they're not, in many respects, the same. On the continuum of feeling like the deck is rigged and it's time to have people more on a level playing field. But you know, I think the right has perhaps more dignity to it. The left has more vim and vigor. I don't know. All I know is I go past the park in front of the state capitol every so often, and it's pretty motley. It's not a sight that gets me wanting to create a revolution. I'm referring to the Occupy Denver group, which I have had the pleasure of passing by.
They did not let me go into work.
Really?
Yeah, in the B of A in San Francisco, my office in that building, and so they did not allow me to go in, and I told them that I'm 99% like them. So please let me go in and do my job.
What'd they say?
After a few minutes, they let me sneak in.
So if you were to do some paper on them, how would you do it? How would you go about it?
I just try to understand what is it that they try to. I think it's a lot of it that people really don't have any direction. They got very disappointed, very angry, but it really no leaders, no direction. And
so again, how would you go about writing a paper?
Of this to hang out too. I don't know.
Would you interview? I would challenge you to. I would challenge you to interview a couple of them, like
I
5.
did when I was in New York.
Okay. Did you take notes?
No.
Could you remember? Could you take notes now?
Some of it. Yeah, some of it I remember.
I mean, I think you've got to go back to more than anecdotal or more than your gut feelings. I think you've got to take a look at. I would take a look at Graeber and see what it is he's talking about. The site that Colin gave us tonight has, I think it's a 10-page article. So that's not just a little bit, and there's an awful lot of philosophy there. They're not. I think there's a group of, pretty much lost souls. Those aren't the people that interest me. The people that interest me are those that are seeing it as a precursor to a wholesale change in society. This is an apocalyptic moment. That interests me. If it's an apocalyptic moment, how does that relate to the work that we're doing?
I don't know. Right now, they cost us so much money.
Yeah, boy, you're touching all my hot buttons, but nonetheless, I'm trying to get this down to something that's academic. I mean, they're messy, they're dirty, all of that. But that's not important. What's important, are they touching something that we need to understand? If they are, what would that be? Well, as far as I'm concerned, you are. I have received no direction, and I haven't talked to Sam for 2 weeks, so I mean, you know that I'm not a professor in the classical sense of it, right? So I'm finding my way here. As far as I'm concerned, if it interests you, and you can you've got to have some thump to it, though. It can't just be a screed. It's got to be something that does fit in with the material we've been studying. That make sense?
Yes.
So, and you can call me if you want to, flesh out some stuff. Happy to talk to you. Or email me and we can set a time to talk or something. But, it interests, the subject of the Occupy does interest me, but I'm also not
Yeah,
interested in just watching you put a
syllabus
bunch
has
of words
a
on a
date
piece
on
of
it.
paper.
Where'd it go?
I want to see some discipline.
Yeah, it was.
That makes sense?
Yes.
Yeah, you guys are both going to get A's for class participation. That's not something you ought to worry about. But yeah, the papers have to have some substance to them.
That page. I just have week 8 individual papers.
And I'll be working with Sonap on that.
Sunday of week 8, I would imagine.
So when is the last day that we can turn in this paper?
Heck if I know. And that's the one.
Yeah, he was very active. Maybe something just came up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is week 6, right?
Right.
Yes. I think December
So-
12 is the last day.
I have no idea what your page limits are or any of that. I'll ask Sam about it, but
Oh, my thought is
And I'm
that I
gonna
need
presume
to get
we're
on the
down to
ball
2,
and figure out what I'm going to write this paper about.
Chad hasn't checked in. Eli's checked in.
I think that's my goal this week, is to really
Sad to lose Chad,
buckle down and choose a
but he was a
topic.
good
I've actually,
contributor.
in doing the discussions, the group discussions, I've run across at least 3 now that I'm interested in.
maybe-
My only concern is that they're very
Maybe
much
I'm hoping he's okay.
along the lines of what
No, I mean,
is
it's literally nothing
I
for the
think
whole week,
probably
and that's sort of not
already
like
covered
him.
heavily in the literature that's already out there, the various articles.
So I'm hoping he's okay.
And
But,
that's why my concern, I don't want to just be rehashing.
Anyway, let's make these papers interesting. Colin, do you have any thoughts?
Okay.
There you go. You know what's missing, though? What's missing is any application to human beings.
Mhm.
So, I know that you're not in the business. By the same token, is there something you can bring to from your personal experience, from people that you know, people at your work? Is there a way you could create I'm thinking out loud here, but I'm thinking, could you do a little questionnaire for your coworkers that would help them understand their own biases and what have you? Take a look at there's a pretty good risk tolerance questionnaire that's done by Finmetrica, FINMETRICA.
My risk tolerance.
Write it down here.
Oh, that is.
But it might be an interesting thing to give them the questionnaire.
Is there an A in there?
Might cost you a little money, but could be pretty interesting. At least see what that is, what they're testing. I gave it to myself, and I thought it was pretty accurate. I thought it got me pretty good. There's another one done by Financial DNA that's I like Financial DNA. I know the fellow. I can't think of his name right now. He's Australian. Hugh Massey. Pardon me? There you go. There are maybe. I thought there wasn't, but there might be. Both Metrica and Financial DNA are Australian, which is kind of interesting. But they put a lot of work into developing these questionnaires, and you know, at least address the issue of risk tolerance. And you might be able to get your coworkers to pay for it. Just a thought. But you know, it's interesting. It's informative. It's not that expensive. You can sign up for it for free if you call yourself a financial advisor, by the way. There you go. Well, I don't like to steal from people, but you know, sometimes it's just to find out about it. They spend a lot of money promoting themselves, and you know, if that's what you're doing, I don't have a problem with it. If you're really doing some financial advising, then go for it. If you're not, then pay them. I think this has been a productive class, even if there haven't been very many of us.
A lot of the larger philosophical.
Any thoughts? Any wrap-ups?
You know, kind of like thinking about what is money and how.
Yeah, I like it. I learned a lot
in
just
by
talking to both.
Very real ways, it really does make the world go round. You know.
Just so I can apply what I learned here into my practice. For example, like you say, that is don't take it too hard.
Yeah.
Or listen to Colin a couple of weeks ago talking about how he advised his friend at work and they did not take his advice, and just on those things that I really just take it back and analyze it and apply it to every day in my business life, and it was pretty good and pretty productive.
All right. Good night, folks.
I'm glad to hear that. That's great. Thank you. Colin, you have any? Well, read Graeber. You know, he really does have something to offer, even if